I woke up Chris Breezy, boom. I'm so surprised that he did not off himself. It really says all we need to know. This music is about a 14-year-old girl that he abused. What's going on, ladies, gents, and everything in between? Today, we're going to be talking about the infamous Fortnite and Invincible singer, D4VD, also known as David. Now, as you guys probably know, this guy, he just got arrested, and they just updated some charges on him. Now, I used to be a big fan of David. I used to listen to his songs. I remember when he blew up. I remember when he blew up on Fortnite. I remember when he blew up on Invincible. And I remember when it turned out that there was a 14-year-old's body in the back of his car. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. At first, I didn't believe it. I'm going to be honest with you. But then as more and more stuff came out, I was like, okay, this guy is fucked up. So then, you know, all that happened, and the internet quite literally solved this case in a week. I think he got found out in September of 2025, and they're just now putting him in jail. I found this video that's going to talk about pretty much everything that's been going on, and we're going to talk about it. So before we get into the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's go!
Now, most people have already heard about this story. Popular singer David, spelled D4VD, was arrested in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez.
So, to piggyback off what he just said, basically the timeline is September, everything gets found out, blah, 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 blah. The internet's like, whoa, he could not have done this. This is David we're talking about. And then, like a week later, the internet quite literally solves the entire case. People find photos of them together, videos of them together, videos of her on his stream, and so many different things that quite literally incriminated this man even more than he already was. The fact that it took law enforcement this long is kind of shocking and very concerning, considering that random people online just put this together in like a week. But like I said, yeah, it just gets worse. And even if he's somehow not guilty of killing her directly, because he was charged with first degree, we still have the fact that a grown man had intercourse with a 14-year-old teenager. And also, even if he didn't kill her, even if he didn't have sex with her, he still was involved some way. So it's really a lose-lose situation. Which also brings me to the point that I'm so surprised that he did not off himself in GTA. They need to make sure, I think he's in solitary because he's a public figure, but they need to make sure that this man is on suicide watch, because there is no way that he hasn't thought about it, and maybe he's tried it a couple times, but if I were him, you know, I would never do what he did, obviously, but if I were him, I probably would have just pulled the trigger, like, a long time ago. We're going to skip forward because I'm pretty sure the beginning of this video is just, like, what happened, and we kind of already figured that out, so we're going to go to the more recent stuff.
But what's come out since then changes everything. The motive, the timeline, and what happened the last night Celeste was ever seen, when David invited her to his home in the Hollywood Hills, and she never came back. And questions kept coming up, until recently, because just recently, David was arrested in connection with the case, which sent shockwaves across social media and raised even more questions. But now, after all this time, the case against David is starting to become a lot clearer. We now know that he's now facing a first-degree murder charge.
For those of you that don't know what first degree is, it's basically the highest charge of murder you can receive with intent to kill. So premeditated killing, so it wasn't accidental and stuff like that. There was an intent to kill this girl. Yeah, let's look at his mugshot, guys. There's so much about this mugshot, and I don't know what it is, and I've been hearing the same thing kind of online. Something about this mugshot just looks off. First of all, we can talk about his eyes. He looks guilty. I don't think it's ever a good thing just to judge people off of, you know, how they look and stuff like that, but with everything that's going on, he looks so guilty. You can see it in his eyes. I don't know, something about his eyes. He just looks like he just looks evil. I don't know why it looks like a 3D photo, if that makes sense. Like it looks like there's some sort of depth to his face that doesn't match up with like traditional mugshot. But yeah, this mugshot is very interesting to look at. It's certainly not something we're used to when it comes to the world of mugshots.
Really look at this. We now also have what they say was the motive, a timeline of what allegedly happened, and the evidence they claim to have. And when you put all of it together, this case becomes a lot worse than people thought. Now, to really understand how this even got to that point, we have to go back to on or about April 23rd, 2025, when, according to investigators, David invited Celeste to his home in the Hollywood Hills area. Celeste arrived, and according to investigators, this was the last time she was known to be alive. Now, up until this point, there have been speculation about the nature of his involvement with Celeste. And it's important to be clear here, we're talking about a grown man and a minor. According to investigators, that is no longer speculation.
This I did not know. I don't know if this is new information, because obviously if they were in a relationship, she's been to his house. But the fact that they're officially saying that on April 23rd, 2025, he invited her in, it really says all we need to know, to be honest with you, but carry on.
We now also have what they say was the motive, a timeline of what allegedly happened, and the evidence they claim to have. And when you put all of it together, this case becomes a lot worse than people thought. Now, to really understand how this even got to that point, we have to go back to on or about April 23rd, 2025, when, according to investigators, David invited Celeste to his home in the Hollywood Hills area. Celeste arrived, and according to investigators, this was the last time she was known to be alive. There have been speculation about the nature of his involvement with Celeste. And it's important to be clear here, we're talking about a grown man and a minor. According to investigators, that is no longer speculation. They allege that David was sexually involved with Celeste, and that this began when she was under the age of 14.
During the course of our investigation, detectives learned that she had been involved in a sexual relationship with Mr. Burke when she was a minor and he was an adult.
But it doesn't stop there, because according to the criminal complaint, investigators say Celeste had at one point been living with David, and in their words, he had recurring access to her, which meant this wasn't something distant or limited. This was direct access over a period of time. Now, when it comes to that last night Celeste was alive, this is when they say things took a much darker turn. They allege that at some point after Celeste arrived to David's home, she threatened to expose the relationship.
Okay, boom. So this, we kind of speculated this already back when everything first came out. Everyone was saying, okay, he either did this and killed her because, you know, he's blowing up and this could get found out and jeopardize his career. It was really just all variations of the same idea, but it's being officially put on paper, which kind of just confirms literally everything. Burke allegedly murdered her, cut up her body. So, from what I hear, Tesla trucks aren't that big. They're kind of small from what I've heard. So, the fact that her body was able to fit... Now, she's a 14-year-old girl. Her body's not going to be that big anyway, but it's still a human body. You know what I mean? So, the fact that he was able to... The fact that they did that to her body enough to where it could fit in that trunk is dire, but it's just disgusting.
Between the two, including the fact that it began when she was underage, which David, of course, knew could seriously damage his career. At the time, David was a rising mainstream artist, and just 2 days earlier, he had announced a Withered World Tour, a global tour set to take him across multiple countries as his career was continuing to expand, and that detail matters. According to investigators, this is where the motive comes in. See, investigators believe that once Celeste became a threat to David, after she threatened to expose their relationship, the situation escalated. And what happened next, they say, is where things went downhill.
This murder was committed for financial gain. As the evidence will show in court, the financial gain was for Mr. Burke to maintain his very lucrative musical career that Celeste was threatening.
They allege that after she threatened to expose him, the situation escalated into her murder. However, it didn't stop there. They allege that on or about May 5th, 2025, Celeste's remains were further altered. Her remains were later found inside a vehicle connected to David, of course, that we know, where they had been left for months.
I remember back when this all first came out, the fact, because they found the body while he was on tour, everybody was like, oh, hey, it couldn't have been him, you know, he's on tour, duh. I was one of those people. I remember when I found out about this, I texted one of my friends and I was like, hey, did you hear about this? And she was like, no, what the hell? And I was like, yeah, no, this is crazy. But then I told her that, hey, I'm pretty sure we had this conversation. If it wasn't with her, it was somebody else. But I was like, hey, he was on tour while this happened. So this, 2 + 2 doesn't actually equal 4. You know what I mean? And here we are now. So it just, I don't know.
Before finally being discovered at an impound lot in September 2025 in Los Angeles. And the evidence they have is what they say connects him to what happened to Celeste. Now, getting into the specifics, this criminal complaint against David also includes special circumstances. And these are very important because
Yeah, I don't know what
they
that
make
means,
the
to be
case
honest with you.
significantly more serious. According to the complaint, one of those is murder for financial gain. Another is the murder of a witness, with Celeste being considered that witness. And the third is what's called lying in wait, which means police believe the act was carried out in a deliberate and concealed manner. The complaint also alleges that David personally used a deadly weapon, described as a sharp instrument, in what happened to Celeste. In other words, they allege a
I remember
sharp
when
object was
when they
used
found out about
in the
this.
killing of Celeste. Now that lying in wait part, that's important to understand, because in legal terms, it's not just about what happened. It's about how it...
One thing I do want to add is, I'm going to scroll back a little bit. The thing about David is his music, when you listen to it, and this is going to be a separate video, so stay tuned for that. But when you look at David's music, there's a lot of themes of murder, death, love, sadness, loss, killing. And that's fine because music is art. But the problem with this is that, well, we look at different artists, for example. We have Chris Brown. And this is a conversation I will expand on in my next video. But we look at artists like Chris Brown, for example. You know, I woke up Chris Breezy, boom. You know what I'm saying? People still listen to his music. And, you know, he has great songs. I like Dave. Well, I liked David's music. And I thought he had great songs too. But I don't know if it's just me. But ever since, and maybe it's because I experienced this, finding this out in real time. Something about his music, it's just ruined now. Like, I genuinely cannot sit down and listen to this man's music anymore. And the reason is because at first it just seemed like it was art, you know, like every other artist, you know, they make certain songs on certain themes. But when you listen to the lyrics and you compare it to everything we know, it's like he was telling on himself and talking about his own situation. And we were all bobbing our heads and listening to it and buying tickets and buying merchandise and so forth and so on, making TikTok edits to his music, not knowing that this music is about a 14-year-old girl that he abused, manipulated, and eventually disposed of. So it kind of goes to show the certain problem with music. And I know people say separate the art from the artist, but I feel like in some cases you just can't. Like, his music is just ruined for me, and I'm sure for many others out there. That's part of the problem with music, in my opinion.
Just about what happened. It's about how it allegedly happened. Lying in wait basically means someone waits, watches, and then carries out a surprise attack. In other words, it suggests planning and it suggests intent. Now, if you try to picture this for a second, Celeste shows up to the home she was invited to by David, not knowing what she's actually walking into. And according to authorities, what happened next was anything but expected. They allege this wasn't random, but something that involved waiting, concealment, and a deliberate act in what happened to Celeste.
Look
and
at him,
legally,
bro. Just
that
look
makes
at
the
him.
case much more serious. Because when or if prosecutors are able to prove something like that, it can elevate the charges and significantly increase the potential consequences. Now, to really understand how this even got to that point, we have to go back to 2023, when this situation, not relationship, situation involving David and Celeste was already developing behind the scenes. At this point, authorities say the two were already sexually involved, while Celeste was still under the age of 14. But the
Which
full
is
extent
insane.
of
How
it
do you even
is
end up
still
in that
not
situation?
entirely
You know what I mean?
clear.
Like,
What we do know is this. According to the criminal complaint, between September 7th, 2023 and September 7th, 2024, David was reportedly involved with Celeste during that time. And this wasn't a one-time situation. Prosecutors allege that this was ongoing over an extended period of time. It's also during this time that investigators say Celeste had at one point been living under the same roof as David. Now, one thing that's still not entirely clear at the time of me recording this video is how exactly Celeste being considered a witness fits into everything we're talking about right now. Although this is included in the complaint, they haven't fully explained what they're specifically referring to, or exactly what she may have been a witness to. Now, based on what's been alleged so far and what we know so far, you can start to piece everything together yourself in your head, if you get what I mean, right? Especially considering that they've already said she was threatening to expose the relationship. So one can only assume that she was a witness in her own case. You get what I'm saying? But we don't know that.
so to kind of add on to that, if that's what they're saying, that she was a threat to his status and, you know, his career and stuff like that, that means that they have either text messages or something, a video, text message, something to confirm that was, you know, something that he was worried about, which just makes the entire case even more eerie. I mean, he had, like, there's evidence of these two. It's like there's evidence of him being with her and her threatening his career. Because, like, this is something that is actually being proven, and they have legitimate evidence for in the court of law. So it just makes everything, like, just more just disturbing, in my opinion. Which, I mean, obviously, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
That yet. So as of right now, that part of the case hasn't been fully laid out publicly.
The details of the allegations that have made, particularly with that special circumstance, will be produced in court.
Now we're at a point where we know, according to the authorities, that there was an ongoing situation between the two, that Celeste at one point was living under the same roof as David, and that he had direct and recurring access to her. And on that final night, she threatened to expose that. And from there, they allege everything escalated, leading to her murder. Now, one of the biggest questions people have been asking is, why did all this take so long? Why
That's
did
what I'm
it take
saying.
this
Right.
long for the police to make an arrest? And according to the authorities, a big part of that comes down to the condition of Celeste's remains. Because of how much time had passed between her death and when she was unfortunately discovered in the manner she was discovered, it delayed the medical examiner's ability to determine a clear cause of death. And that also meant that crucial evidence had either degraded or completely disappeared over time, unfortunately. On top of that, investigators were also dealing with something else, a massive amount of false information that was spreading online. If you guys remember, when the story first broke, things were pretty chaotic. There was a lot being said, and the majority of it was actually not accurate. And even a lot of very popular media outlets ended up pushing information that wasn't fully verified at all. And because law enforcement had to sort through all of that information while trying to piece together what was done to Celeste, it made this investigation that much more difficult, and ultimately, that's what added all this time to it. Now, another key reason why this case took time is because, according to the authorities, there was no direct eyewitness who actually saw what happened to Celeste. And on top of that, they also didn't have any clear footage that directly shows David committing the act. So, what that meant was investigators had to rely on something else, a full and extremely thorough investigation. They went through digital evidence, they went through forensic evidence, and every lead they could find, while also speaking to witnesses. And according to the authorities, not everyone they spoke to was cooperative. So before bringing any charges, they wanted the highest level of confirmation possible based on everything they had collected. And that brings us to another question people have been asking. What makes them so confident that they can actually prove this case? It comes down to the totality of the evidence. They say they have a combination of physical evidence, forensic evidence, and digital evidence that they plan to present in court. And
So I heard that there's 40 terabytes of evidence. This could be an incorrect number. I've seen it on Twitter. Twitter isn't always the most reliable source of information, but I've seen it more than once on my timeline. If that's you know how big 1 terabyte is? For there to be 40 of them, that's a lot of evidence.
in fact, they say the amount of evidence collected totals over 40 terabytes.
Okay,
Not
see, there we go.
gigabytes, Terabytes. And based on everything they've gathered, they believe they can prove their case against David beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, at the same time, his legal team is pushing to move things forward, requesting a preliminary hearing within the next 10 days. Right now, we don't know exactly what that evidence is or what it looks like in detail. And anyone who tells you that they have that evidence is obviously lying. But that's something we're likely going to learn very soon. What we do know is that based on everything that's been laid out so far, this case is way worse than we thought. And we're only just starting to see what it looks like. Now, with all that being said, I think it's important we stay focused on what actually happened here. A child lost her life.
Facts.
And that's something that shouldn't get lost in all these very grim and dark details or all the noise around his case. Celeste had her whole life ahead of her. You know, it was taken from her. And it was all taken from her in a situation she should have never been in to begin with. And that's not something anyone can put on her, because Celeste was a child, and children aren't capable of understanding the kind of situations.
Yeah, at the end of the day, a 14-year-old girl in middle school, high school lost her life. In a situation she should have never been in. You really can't fault her for it because she's a child. Children are stupid. Not to say that she's stupid, but, you know, children do things. You know what I mean? And with everybody that's reporting on it, it's just important to understand that, again, this is a child that lost their life. Now, I did also see something else that was released literally like a couple hours ago. It's currently like 2 o'clock in the morning after as I'm recording this. And so I did also see this, that the family had ended up speaking out. It's a short video, it's like 35 seconds. But we're just going to take a look at it and see what it says.
Family of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the 14-year-old girl found dead in the trunk of a singer's car, has released their public statement. They say, quote, Celeste was a beautiful, strong girl who loved to sing and dance. Every Friday night was movie night, and we spent wonderful times together. We love her very much, and she always told us that she loved us. We miss her deeply. All we want is justice for Celeste. They also sent us this new picture
Oh my
of
gosh,
Celeste playing.
man. Hold on. Let me put this bigger. Hold on. Dude. This is a child. This is a little baby. Look at her. How could you look at this face and be sexually attracted to that, dude? This is a kid. This is a kid, man. This is a little baby.
The statement comes a day after singer David appeared in court for her murder. Celeste's remains were found in David's car last September, but it took 7 months before officers arrested David last week. He has pleaded not guilty and is due back in court on Thursday.
Well, if he's doing court Thursday, then that's literally tomorrow. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video covering the topic of everything that we know so far about David. Like I've said multiple times, this dude's sick. Whether or not he killed her, he's still, like, it's over. His career and everything is done. His social image clipped. Even if he didn't kill her, he still had relations with a 14-year-old girl. He probably had involvement with her death. And it's all just a disgusting situation overall. Like I mentioned earlier as well, I'm going to be doing a video covering, like, the dangers of music, kind of. And like, paying attention to what you're listening to. Because his music is just, like, so eerie now when you look back at what has transpired and everything that we know. But if you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video. Peace.